Chapter 1, Becoming Adrien Mallorne. Seo-jun was sitting down on the window seat, peering out at the passing scenery as his chin rested on his hand. The bus was unusually empty, with only a few others scattered on various seats throughout, which was probably because he was taking it at a later time than usual. "You are coming tonight, yeah?" his sister, Seo-jun, asked him through the phone. It was Friday evening and he was on the bus heading to his eldest sister's home for the weekend. Seo-jun stayed in the dorms during his time in college but made sure to visit home every other weekend. "Yeah. I'll be a little late. I stopped by the bookstore first," he told her. The newest volume to one of the novels he liked to read in his spare time was released earlier that day. It was book number 4 in the series, and it was a series that he never thought that he would have read because the books took on a darker theme. The books, which there were supposed to be a total of 6 altogether, was about a young woman who had been locked away by her obsessive fiancé who finally got the chance to escape. She then travels to an enemy kingdom where she makes a deal with the second prince. It was your typical romance story, and Seo-jun was a fan of the genre. He just wasn't fond of the obsessive and abusive fiancé. He typically avoided reading books that had those types of characters in them. Seo-jun released a sigh. "I don't see how you and Seo-ah can read those things all the time." It was his second sister, Seo-ah, who had awakened his love for novels and manhwas. "They're all based on fantasy. It's not like one of those guys on those covers will walk out and suddenly become real," his sister said, something that Seo-jun had heard before. When Seo-jun was 3, his father passed away from cancer and his mother decided to remarry, leaving behind her 3 children. Seo-jun had just turned 19 while Seo-ah was 14. Seo-jun had to start working to help support them, leaving Seo-ah to babysit the young Seo-jun. It basically meant that his second sister mainly read romance manhwas to him before bedtime, and yes, there were some BL mixed into them. He would never complain though. His sisters made his life as easy and carefree as possible. Heck, they were even the ones who named him. Their mother was unable to pull herself out of her depression when he was born, and their father was in the hospital because of a tumor, so Seo-jun named him. Seo-ah had agreed to the name because it was the name of one of her favorite characters from an action romance book that she had read. Seo-jun chuckled. "You know Seo-ah will be saddened to hear you say that," he teased her. His sister, Seo-ah, would marry almost any one of the male leads from her books. And Seo-jun probably would too, depending on which male lead it was. Growing up with a BL-loving sister, Seo-jun had learned to be open-minded. He was so open-minded that he had dated both a girl and a guy in high school, though not at the same time. He wasn't that open-minded. "I'll see you soon," Seo-jun told him before hanging up. The sound of tires squealing broke Seo-jun out of his thoughts. Since he was sitting toward the back of the bus, he couldn't see what was happening, but the bus started swerving hard to the left, making him slam his shoulder against the window. Seo-jun bolted up from his seat just like the other passengers. The bus was angled sharply into the other lane, heading straight for the edge of the road, which was an overpass, meaning that it was roughly a 5-meter drop. A few of the passengers started panicking when the bus driver let a few curse words fly from his mouth. The bus showed no signs of slowing down or veering off its current course. Seo-jun dropped his book bag and immediately started running his fingers along the window trying to find the release mechanism to open it. Before he could get the window open, a loud crash was heard. The bus had hit the wall lining both sides of the road. The bus started careening before tipping dangerously. A woman around his eldest sister's age fell on her stomach and started sliding toward the front of the bus. Closing his eyes, Seo-jun sent up a prayer to his sisters along with a silent apology. He only hoped that his sisters could move on from the news of his death and that he was sorry that he never got the chance to pay them back for everything they had done for him. He was pessimistic about this situation because he believed it would be almost impossible to come out without any serious or fatal injuries, but maybe he should try to be a little hopeful. He squeezed his eyes even tighter and bit the inside of his mouth, sending a silent prayer up into the heavens. The bus teeter-tottered before fully angling towards the ground. The metalwork on the bottom of the bus screeched as it scraped against the cement. Then the bus slid loose from its lodgings. Seo-jun, who had been desperately clinging onto the seat, felt himself slam up against it. A deafening noise soon filled his ears as the bus came to a sudden halt as it slammed into the road beneath it. A searing pain ripped through his body before everything turned black and even his thoughts slowed down until they were almost non-existent. Suddenly, his brain started working again and his thoughts went into overdrive. A faded and watery image of a boy with shoulder-length blonde hair appeared behind his tightly closed lids. The boy's bright blue eyes looked sad and he looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't. The image faded away and a dim light appeared behind his closed eyelids. Was this the afterlife? Is that how he was able to think again, because his soul was now in some kind of purgatory? And who was that boy? A burning pain returned to his back, making his skin feel hot and cold at the same time. Did he survive the crash? The sound of a creaking door reached his pounding ears. The click of high heels sounded against the floor, pounding a new and painful throb into his skull with every step. "Oh, Adrien!" A feminine voice called out, making his head pound. He started to feel dizzy even though his eyes were still closed. "My poor Adrien." The sound of heels clicking against the floor echoed, drawing closer. The clacking of the heels made him want to cry as the sound sent a stabbing pain through his skull that throbbed so hard that it made him see fuzzy lights sparking behind his closed eyelids. Who's Adrien? Although a better question would be, who was this woman that was frantically calling out? She didn't sound like anyone he knew, nor did she sound like a nurse. And it certainly didn't feel like a hospital since Seo-jun was pretty sure that he was lying on the cold, hard floor. Something cold and wet dropped against his forehead, the sensation a cooling touch that eased up some of the pain that he was feeling. "Nadeline, give me the kit," that unfamiliar voice demanded. "Yes, madam," a different, younger voice said. The dizzying sensation increased. A faint image of a young girl with hazel eyes wearing a maid uniform following behind a graceful woman with ivory skin and pale blonde hair appeared in his mind. Seo-jun wasn't sure how he knew it, but he instinctively recognized the people in that image. Or was it a memory? Something inside him was telling him that it was a memory, though he wasn't sure whose. The cooling touch on his forehead disappeared, only to be replaced by something warm, something that felt a lot like a hand. "Oh, my poor Adrien," that sad voice breathed out heavily, sounding as if it were choking on a sob. "Adrien." She's calling out that name again. Why does it sound like she's talking to me? I still haven't figured out why that name sounds so familiar. Seo-jun felt confused, not sure how he ended up in whatever this situation was. The soft tapping sounds of flat-heeled shoes drew closer. "Here you are, madam. Do you want me to treat his wounds?" the younger voice asked. "No, I'll do it myself," said the older, more familiar voice. The sound of a box clicking open and of wood striking against wood rang in his ears with a dull thud that didn't kill his throbbing head. "Adrien, I need you to sit up for me, my son," the sad yet older feminine-sounding voice spoke with a wobble. A slender hand wrapped around his arm. He hissed out in pain when another hand touched the back of his shoulder. Amidst the stinging and burning sensation, a tearing, wet feeling overcame him when the hand touched his skin. "Bear with it," the voice was firm and reassuring, "the pain will go away soon. I just need to take care of your wounds." Seo-jun numbly felt his hands on the ground. Using all of his strength, he tried to sit himself up to help the woman whose voice sounded familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. The teeth-clenching movement made all the blood rush to his head, making him feel even more disoriented. The movement caused the cold air to strike against the bare skin of his back, causing him to bite his tongue to stop himself from crying out. This felt more like something had struck against his back multiple times than slamming face first into a mesh of metal and cement. The oddly familiar-sounding woman breathed a long and low hiss when she saw his back. "He's gone too far this time," she growled out, sounding like a bear who was protecting its cub from a hunter, or a pissed-off trash panda guarding its young. "The disinfectant might not be enough," the other woman spoke, her voice tinged with sadness. "Shall I bring a bottle of alcohol, madam?" the younger voice asked. "Please do." The so-called madam answered immediately. Seo-jun heard the second set of footsteps belonging to the worker trot off at a fast pace. Where am I?" Seo-jun asked, his voice coming out hoarse as if it hadn't been used for a while. You're in the cellar. I'm so sorry that I wasn't here to protect you, Adrien. I didn't know he would go this far while I was away. Seo-jun felt himself panic at the older woman's words. The cellar? Why the hell am I in a cellar? Who was the he that did this to me? And why does this woman sound like she's apologizing to her son or someone equally important to her? The questions rapidly shot through his mind, unable to voice themselves aloud. Feeling extremely confused and disoriented, Seo-jun used his current situation to ask a very unusual question, a question that he desperately believed he needed the answer to. Who am I? Seo-jun asked, hating how sore and raw his throat felt. What kind of question is that, Adrien? You are my son. The older woman answered in a shaky voice. Did I somehow get mixed up with someone else on the bus? However, that doesn't explain how I wound up in a cellar. Wait, don't tell me I somehow became this Adrien person. That's a ridiculous thought. Switching souls is the stuff of fantasy that only happens in books and movies. You're letting your imagination get the better of you, Seo-jun. Seo-jun scolded himself internally, trying to calm his rapidly growing panic and the numerous questions piling up in his head. Who are you? Seo-jun tried another question, relieved that his voice wasn't as shaky, though it did hurt him more to speak than it did on the last question. I've brought the alcohol, madam. Seo-jun heard the sound of a cork being pulled out. Here, drink. The cool feeling of glass softly pressed against his parched lips. He opened his mouth and took a slow, shallow drink. The alcohol poured down his throat, quenching his thirst but burning his throat raw. The bottle was soon taken away from his lips. Bite onto this, came the maid's voice, which Seo-jun was pretty sure the older woman had called her Nadeline. With his eyes still closed, Seo-jun decided to trust the women before him. He opened his mouth once again and a cloth was pressed into it. Seo-jun bit down on the cloth, having a bad premonition as to why he needed the gag. The shredded shirt was carefully removed from his back. The cool air stung his aching back, informing him that he had open, bleeding wounds. And then the bad premonition came to fruition. The room temperature alcohol was poured onto his back. His back felt as if it were lit on fire. Tears pricked the edges of his closed eyelids and a scream escaped him, trying its best to be heard above the gag that blocked it from fully voicing its agony. A gentle tapping eased the pain on his back as the two women wiped away the blood, sweat, and alcohol. He focused his mind on the gentle touch. My name is Teresa Mallorne, the Countess to the Mallorne County and the wife of Count Mallorne. The woman finally answered his earlier question, her voice heavy with emotion. I am the temporary heir to the Ratcliffe Merchantry and the Vespa County. I am your mother. Ratcliffe. Mallorne. They sound familiar. Wait, is this body's name Adrien Mallorne since this woman claiming to be this body's mother has the married surname of Mallorne? Adrien Mallorne. Where have I heard that name before? An actor? A singer? Maybe a character from a movie or a book? The younger girl, by the sound of her voice, started carting her fingers through his hair, gently parting each strand. Her fingers paused halfway through her carding. Madam. The hands on his back stopped, half of his back having been covered in medicine and bandages. A gasp came from above his head. Nadeline, I'm afraid I won't be able to keep my hands steady enough. Can you stitch it for me? Came Teresa Mallorne's voice that had a small quiver in it. Yes, madam. Nadeline answered. Stitch. I need stitches on my head. Did the original owner of this body die from these injuries? The body's mother went back to working on his back while the servant started stitching up his head. Seo-jun kept his teeth clenched against the cloth in his mouth and his fingers curled into the floor. Why I minus the angry voice muttered from behind his back. That man needs to hold back his temper. If he wasn't necessary, I would minus that man. Is she talking about this body's father, Count Mallorne? Why do these names sound so familiar? Maybe if I wasn't in so much pain, I could think a little more clearly. Let us finish getting you patched up. After some rest, maybe things will become clearer. Rest. That sounds wonderful, Seo-jun thought to himself. Not long after, his head was stitched up and his back was cleaned and bandaged. Nadeline helped Seo-jun to Adrien's room to rest. It was difficult moving from the cellar to the second floor because Seo-jun was still unable to open his eyes. According to Nadine, they were swollen shut from the intense bruising. Seo-jun was laid down on his stomach. The bed underneath was plush and soft, allowing him to instantly drift off into sleep, exhausted from the day's events. Images that felt like memories flashed through his sleeping mind. Several images involved twin boys with ocean blue hair and matching blue eyes. The twins would find new ways to torment Adrien, from insults and verbal abuse, tripping him down the stairs, stealing his homework only to shred it in front of him, among other things. Other images included a serene woman with pale blonde hair and equally pale green eyes. She would whisper words of encouragement to Adrien while preparing him to take over the Ratcliffe Merchantry Guild, a business that Adrien did not believe he deserved as the third child. There were memories of an older man with long ocean blue hair and fierce blue eyes raising his hand to Adrien. Then there were images of a young Adrien lying in his room, immersed in his drawings. Sometimes, the young Adrien could be found singing and learning to play new instruments, much to the ire of Count Mallorne. Chapter 2. What is with this situation? Seo-jun held her daughter against her hip as she turned the rice cooker on. Seo and Seo-jun would be coming over shortly for a pleasant family meal. The entry door opened and Ha-jun came in. He switched his shoes out for slippers before coming all the way in. He headed directly to the kitchen and planted a kiss on Seo-jun's cheek before planting one on their daughter's forehead. Seo-jun isn't here yet? Ha-jun asked, looking around for his brother-in-law. He stopped by the bookstore first. He should be here shortly. Seo-jun answered. She then turned on the skillet for the fish. The front door opened again. Ah! You wouldn't believe the traffic. Seo-jun exclaimed upon entering, struggling to switch out her shoes while holding her keys with one hand. There was a real bad accident and they have multiple roads blocked off. Seo-jun said. An accident? Ha-jun asked. Seo-jun nodded. Yeah. Hey, Seo-jun. You're lucky you come straight after classes. The bus you normally take crashed over a bridge. She hollered. Seo-jun felt her blood turn cold and the oil that she had in her free hand slipped to the ground. Call Seo-jun, now. She yelled at Ha-jun, who already had his cell phone out. What's going on? Why are you acting like Seo-jun isn't here yet? Seo-jun asked upon entering the kitchen. Because he isn't. Seo-jun snapped, worry taking hold of her when Ha-jun couldn't get through to Seo-jun. He was on his way when I called him a little while ago. She explained, panic gripping her. Seo-jun turned pale, and her large black eyes turned impossibly larger. I'll go check. She said, already running to the front door. Go to, Seo-jun motioned for Ha-jun to follow. I'll try calling him again. Seo-jun sat her daughter down and began dialing Seo-jun's cell. Please pick up, baby brother. Seo-jun woke up. He slowly picked himself up off the bed. Rubbing his eyes gently, he found that he could finally open them, though his vision was severely blurry. The room that the maid, Nadine, brought him to was a spacious bedroom with a full-size wooden bed with an ivory green canopy, reminiscent of Countess Mallorne's eyes. There was a writing desk next to one side of the bed while a nightstand was on the other side. I guess she's my mother now since it seems I'm stuck as Adrien. Seo-jun sighed at the strange predicament that he found himself in. The room also held a small table and couch. Along one wall was a fully furnished bookcase. Sitting in front of the window was an easel with a half-painted canvas sitting on it. Adrien and I have the same hobbies, Seo-jun remarked. This was based on the memories that he had received and the scene he saw before him. The bedroom he found himself in was quite large. Well, it was bigger than the one-room apartment that he and his sisters had lived in when he was younger. Slowly getting out of bed, Seo-jun made his way to the door where the bathroom was. The bathroom was a bit small for a room this size but far bigger than any bathroom he had ever seen. Multicolored brown tile covered the floor, pairing well with the dark wood of the cabinets. The ivory sink was large with brass handles. The stand-alone tub was large and oval-shaped with brass feet. This was the first time Seo-jun had seen a clawfoot tub in person. He made his way to the large floor mirror that was nestled near the sink. Staring back at him in the mirror was not the ear-length shiny black hair or the almond-shaped dark brown eyes but shoulder-length, shaggy blonde hair with an aqua blue coloring towards the ends. The eyes staring back at him were slightly larger and more feline-like with teal-colored irises. The reflection staring back at him was most definitely not Korean. He lifted a hand and weakly waved, watching as the blonde in the mirror copied his movements. It seemed he really was Adrien Mallorne now, but why did this appearance seem familiar? A knock sounded on the bedroom door. Seo-jun, now Adrien, made his way to the door and opened it hesitantly. A girl with shoulder-length wavy brown hair and large, doe-like hazel eyes was standing on the other side with a trolley filled with easily digestible food. Nadeline. The girl was the maid from earlier based on his memories. Greetings, young Master Adrien. I've come to bring your food and check up on your wounds. Nadeline said, her words and movements polite. Adrien moved out of the way to allow Nadeline to enter the room. The maid made her way to the small table and laid the food out on it. Would you like to eat first or have me check your wounds first? Nadeline asked. You may check my wounds, Adrien answered, the words and authoritative tone flowing out naturally. After Nadeline rebandaged the wounds on his back and applied an ointment to his face, Adrien sat down to eat. How is your head, young master? She asked. Adrien paused in taking a spoonful of the creamy onion soup. If you're asking about my memories, some of them have returned but not all, Adrien replied honestly. Let me know if you have any questions, young master. Adrien pondered for a bit before settling onto the main question that was currently eating away at him. Well, not the main question, like how he had wound up as Adrien, but a different one. Do you know why the Count, my father minus Adrien, corrected himself and hating every second of it, decided to reprimand me so harshly? He asked. Adrien had memories of the Count beating him but none were as severe as to what he had awoken to. Nadeline hesitated from where she stood by the couch, probably afraid to say anything that might sound like she was slandering the Count. Count Mallorne found out that you signed up for the arts department for Triss Academy instead of the physical department like young Master Cedric and young Master Braden, Nadeline informed him. The arts department? Does that mean that I am attending school? He asked tentatively. Nadeline gave a brief nod of her head. All young nobles are required to be home tutored until they turn 17. During the ages of 17 to 21, all eligible aristocrats must attend an academy. You've recently turned 17 this year and have been accepted into Triss Academy, Nadeline explained thoroughly, knowing that her young master may or may not need the extra details due to his head injury and temporary memory loss. Triss Academy. Okay, that really sounds familiar. Didn't I read a book that took place in a school with that same name? Adrien asked himself. Triss Academy is one of the best academies to exist in our kingdom. It's located in the capital. The other young masters are also attending this year, though they will be in a higher year and in a different department than you, young Master Adrien. Nadeline explained. Kingdom? Adrien knew that they lived in a feudal system based on the memories that he had retained. Nadeline, what's the royal family's name? Adrien asked with a sinking suspicion that he had been reincarnated into a character inside a book, but he had read many books and most of them had similar names and places in them, so it was hard for him to know which one he currently found himself in. We are in the Velryn Kingdom and the ruling monarch is King Asher de Velryn. There are 2 queens by his side. Queen Regent Serena is his first wife. The Queen Regent gave birth to the first and third princes. The second queen is Queen Consort Paulina, who gave birth to the second prince. The first prince is the crown prince and his name is Nathaniel Aronson de Velryn. Nadeline answered. Nathaniel Velryn. Adrien was startled upon hearing that name. As soon as he heard it, memories of his life as Seo-jun flashed through his mind. In particular, they were memories of a certain 3-part novel series. In that series, Nathaniel Velryn was an arrogant prince with flaming red hair and golden yellow eyes and he was the male lead. The female lead in the series was Lyanna Silva. She was the daughter of a poor baron, but with her outstanding ability to absorb knowledge, she was accepted into Triss Academy, where she became entangled with Crown Prince Nathaniel. The prince fell in love with her at first sight and proposed to her. Lyanna accepted it, and together, The two of them rooted out the corrupted nobles plaguing their kingdom and their lives. He had enjoyed reading the novels because Lionel was kind of a badass. She had no problem with verbally attacking her harassers or even slapping them when it was called for. And then he remembered the numerous antagonists. There were quite a few major villains and numerous smaller ones. The third prince was painted as an antagonist while the second prince was so unremarkable that he never even made an appearance. But what had Adrien freezing was that Count Mallorne and his two eldest sons made up three of the minor villains. He wasn't sure about Adrien Mallorne since the boy was only mentioned briefly. Adrien resisted pulling at his hair, knowing full well that it would only cause him physical pain. There's no point in trying to persuade the Count and my new brothers from harassing the female lead, plus I really don't want to. I could try to amass power to extricate my newfound mother and myself away from the three bad apples, but I'm just now at the age to start attending the academy, plus, I'm pretty sure they don't allow for divorce in this kingdom. Adrien thought to himself, trying to figure out how he should handle the situation he now found himself in. Adrien sighed heavily, the food in front of him no longer appetizing. How should he approach this? How can he approach it? Should he make a plan, or should he figure things out as he goes? The only thing he knew for certain was that he needed to attend Triss Academy. That way, he'll be able to escape from the Count's violent ways. He also needed to keep an eye on Cedric and Brayden, his newfound siblings. Nadeline made a small sound, drawing Adrien out of his thoughts. The second prince is Prince Michael Williams de Vellerin. The third prince is Lear Aronson de Vellerin. Would you like to know specific details about the princes since you'll be attending the academy with two of them? Nadeline asked. Adrien nodded his head. Sure. To be honest, I don't remember anything about the royal family. The specific details might help him gain more memories and figure out who to avoid. And even without the greater details, he was already gaining much from this conversation. Most of the names he had heard so far were of Hebrew and Old English origin from his old world. But why is my name spelled the French way? Isn't Nadeline's name also an alternate spelling of a French name? Man, I'm glad Seo read me all those novels growing up. It really expanded my knowledge of the different languages and culture to an extent. Nadeline nodded her petite head, her short, wavy brown hair dancing with the movement. Crown Prince Nathaniel is 20 this year. He is held in high esteem for being at the top of his year. Last year, he became engaged to the daughter of Baron Silva. That lined up with the novels about this world that Adrien had read when he was Seo-jun. Prince Michael is 19 this year. He is deemed as being quite average except for his looks. 2 years ago during the biannual ball, which was held in the Shigaron Kingdom that year, His Highness made the sudden announcement that he would not be seeking a female life partner, but a male one. Nadeline's voice had dropped into a conspiratorial whisper. Adrien felt his eyes widened at the unexpected revelation. Based on the original Adrien's memories, in this world, or at least in this kingdom, same-sex marriages were not frowned upon since quite a few commoners practiced it. Same-sex marriages allowed for the couple to forego any chances of offspring, helping them save on money in the long run while keeping the population under control. But just because the commoners didn't frown upon it didn't mean that the nobles abided by the same sentiments. Most nobles found same-sex marriages as sacrilegious. So it was surprising that a prince would willingly admit to being gay. It's a shame, Nadeline whispered. I find the second prince much more charming than the others. Please do not tell anyone that I have said this, young master. I won't, Adrien promised the slightly sullen maid. What about Prince Lear? He asked, bringing the topic back on course. Before Nadeline answered his question, she switched out the empty dinner plates with a dessert plate. The dessert she had presented him was a type of pudding that was easy to digest. Prince Lear is 16 years of age. He is rumored to be as intelligent as the crown prince but even more arrogant. There are also rumors that he is a spellsword. Her words could almost be seen as blasphemous. This world was your typical fantasy world, which meant that it had some form of magic. There were two main power types in this world, elementalism and swordmasters. The basic and most common type of magic was elementalism. Elementalism allowed for a person born with mana to use elemental magic. Each person's mana naturally aligned with one type of element, though in some rare cases, a person's mana could align with two different types of elements. The elements included wind, water, earth, fire, light, shadow, and space, and each of those elements had their own individual powers that were common yet unique to each individual. The earth element had individual powers like tree manipulation, dirt manipulation, and growth. The water element had individual powers like underwater breathing, water manipulation, water formation, water blast, and so on. The shadow element had individual powers like shadow manipulation, shadow movement, and curses under it. Light magic had light manipulation, barrier magic, and healing magic, among other things. Space elementalism was the rarest form but also the easiest one to see for those who could afford it. The rare space elementalists that were born were recruited by various kingdoms and paid quite handsomely to run warp portals all across the continent to make travel easier. That was elementalism down to its basic form. Once elementalism could be developed to its fullest, it could then be used to create complex spells which can be transferred to objects for use. The spells and artifacts were restricted to the type of element one was aligned with, but it allowed for a more unique and diverse array of magic. These were typically bought by those with little to no mana. The other application was in creating and building mana-based potions and tools. This form was called alchemy. The other type of power in this world were sword masters. Sword masters could be broken into two distinct branches, aura users and spellswords. Aura users were the apex of sword experts that were born with no mana and were able to hone their life force into a visible and powerful energy that could be fused with their weapon during combat. Spellswords were the apex of sword experts that were born with mana and they were able to fuse their elemental mana into their weapon to create a fine layer around it. This fine layer was similar to an aura and just as powerful. So, the Crown Prince is an aura user, if the book is anything to go off of, and the third prince is a spellsword. Why does the second prince seem so underwhelming next to these powerhouses? Adrien gave a brief nod of his head to show that he had heard Nadeline. Tell me, when does the new semester at Triss Academy start? He asked. In 2 weeks, young master. The Mallornes do not have an estate in the capital, so you will be required to live in the dorms with the other young masters. You'll be in separate rooms, and I believe the students are divided by their years, though there may be some exceptions. Nadeline answered. Adrien nodded, pleased that he wouldn't have to share a room with his new brothers. Hell, he may not even be on the same floor as them. Nadeline left with the empty food trolley after that. Adrien stood up from the couch and made his way to the bathroom. He stood in front of the full-length mirror and placed his palm flat against it. Seo-jun, Seo-a. I promise to not forget you and to live the way you taught me to. Adrien released a sigh, a forlorn expression morphing his bruised and battered face. It'll be hard without you, but I hope the two of you can live without regret. He turned away from the mirror, still not used to seeing his new face that had been reflected at him on the mirror's surface. Chapter 3, The Mallornes. Adrien found himself lying in bed with a few books he had borrowed from the family library. He wanted to increase his knowledge of this world before entering Triss Academy. The original Adrien's memories of common knowledge were a bit hazy and lacking, probably due to them not being linked to any strong emotions like all the other clearer memories were. This world contained 5 known major continents and 7 minor ones. From his understanding, he was currently in the Velryn Kingdom located on the Eurasian continent. The Seo-jun Kingdom, which he had heard about from Nadeline, was also situated on the Eurasian continent and was located across the major river running through the Vespa County, Callahan Marquisate, and Sissel's Duchy. Bang! Bang! Came the deafening knock on his bedroom door. The knocking subsided right before an even louder noise banged against the door. The door slammed open from the force of the strike, banging against the wall. Even the hinges rattled from the force. Startled, Adrien looked up from his book to find a man entering his room. The jerk who had intruded in on him was tall and lean with a short, bulbous nose and a wide forehead. His sandy brown mustache twitched when his lips dipped down into a sneer. The Count requests your presence. You will be joining him, the Countess, and the young masters for dinner. The man's voice was crude and sharp, lacking in respect. Adrien remembered the rude guy from the original Adrien's memories. He was none other than the head butler and right-hand man to Count Mallorne, Caleb Aldrich. Caleb had been the man behind the whip on the Count's orders on several occasions. Yes, the Count had ordered Adrien, his son, to be whipped. The original Adrien had actually died during one such occasion, which is how Seo-jun came to possess the body. Adrien, who was still in bed, laid down the book he had been reading. With a glare, he looked at the head butler and spoke in an authoritative voice that showed his animosity. "Who gave you the right to enter my chambers without my permission?" The head butler, who was taller than Adrien, sneered down at him with a haughty expression. "The Count requests your audience for dinner. It has been quite some time since you have attended." Butler spoke, his voice still lacking respect. Adrien gave a slight nod of his head. "I'll be there," he said simply. "Though I really don't want to go," he thought to himself. He hadn't seen hide nor hair of the Count since he had awoken in the cellar, and he had hoped that it would stay like that up to his departure. "You are to meet him in his study before dinner," Caleb reminded him as an afterthought. Adrien's eyebrows furrowed together, his face feeling much better now that it was no longer swollen with bruising. "Do you know what for?" Adrien asked. The insufferable man's sneer deepened. "He wishes to discuss your deplorable behavior." The man answered rudely, but at least he answered. "Mine. I have done nothing to warrant my behavior to be described as such, nor are there any corresponding memories that would suggest that the original Adrien had done something to warrant such a description." The thoughts flashed through Adrien's mind. The head butler left after that, leaving the bedroom door open behind him. After shutting the door, Adrien continued his reading until it was time to meet the Count. He slid a bookmark in between the pages, then stood up with a languid stretch. After changing into something more befitting than the loungewear he had been wearing, he headed down the stairs. He passed by 4 maids on his way. It seemed the Mallornes were rich but not as well off as most around the same rank or higher. It was still odd to him, living this kind of lifestyle. Seo-jun had always lived on the poorer side of life with just him and his sisters. It had taken everything he had to gain a full-ride scholarship to a local business university, giving up on his dreams of music to find a way to enter into the business world as fast as he could to help his sisters. Though life was hard, he had been truly happy. On the other hand, Adrien Mallorne grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth. He had been allowed to indulge in his dreams, but he had suffered terribly for it due to the strict life that his father imposed. Even though he had grown up with money and could attend the top school in the kingdom just because of his family name, he had been truly miserable. And now, Adrien was living with both memories and experiences, finding it confusing at times. But the thing that confused him the most was that he was now living a life of luxury. He came to a stop outside the Count's office, using faint memories as guidance. Conrad Walter, the Count's aide, was just coming out, a stack of papers in his hand. The youthful man was dressed in a fine suit that accented his reddish-brown eyes. His long, wavy red hair was worn up in his preferred style while working. "Good evening, young Master Adrien," Conrad greeted cordially. Among the staff, Conrad and Nadeline were the only ones who had shown kindness towards Adrien. Most of the staff either ignored him or outright mocked him because of the way the Count treated him. "Evening, Mr. Walter," Adrien greeted in kind. "Are you here to see the Count?" Conrad asked, concern lacing his eyes. "I am," Adrien said before entering the study. The study was a spacious room with one wall entirely dedicated to books. A dark leather love seat and chair sat in one end of the large room. At the other end was a large wooden desk with intricate floral designs carved into the legs. Count Mallorne was sitting behind the desk as he pored over a stack of documents. Adrien, for some odd reason, found it strange to see the man actually working. He figured that the Count would delegate his tasks to his aide instead of meticulously working on them himself. At least, that was how the memories seemed to paint the man. Count Mallorne was a young-looking man even though he was in his early 40s. His long hair was tied neatly to his back. Upon hearing Adrien enter, he looked up with piercing blue eyes that held not an ounce of warmth in them. "Have you decided to give up on your folly?" the Count asked, looking back down at the papers. Folly. Adrien was genuinely confused. What did the Count consider to be folly? Was that last lesson not enough? Give up on the arts course and sign up for the physical course, it is not too late. The Count said. Oh. Adrien looked down at his skinny, battered body. Neither Seo-jun nor Adrien Mallorne had the build or dedication to learn any physical activities, not unless one counted jogging. I'm sorry, Count Mallorne. Adrien refused to address the man as father. The last time left a bad taste in his mouth. I believe I would be unable to learn the sword, my talents lie in another area. The Count looked up at him with a sneer marring his handsome features. Why was such a man so young and good-looking? It was truly misleading. Talent. What talent? You have no talent. The Count went back to looking over the papers on his desk. You have always been lacking in your studies, wasting your time away with silly paintings and fiddling with the piano. He spoke with disinterest. Have you even looked at any of my paintings? Adrien asked. He had spent an evening looking at all of the original Adrien's drawings and paintings. They were really good with a fine attention to detail. They were a lot like Seo-jun's artworks before he started diving into his studies more. Have you ever listened to me play the piano, or any instrument for that matter? Adrien asked. He had seen a memory of the Countess and a young Adrien playing the piano, coming up with their own songs. Cedric and Braden had even joined them. That had been a time before the twins started turning cold and mean towards the original Adrien. Why would I need to? The remarks from your private tutors speak enough about whatever talents you may or may not have. The Count spoke with that same disinterest. I never had a tutor for any of those, Adrien stated. Mother taught me how to play the piano and violin. I learned how to draw on my own. Adrien said, defending himself and the original. I wasn't referring to those leisure activities. If one cannot keep up with their studies or gain a grasp on basic knowledge, then there is no way they would have the time to properly enjoy such hobbies or learn how to excel at them. Said the Count, still not looking at Adrien. You would change your mind if you would only look at them, Adrien pleaded, knowing that the original Adrien wanted some form of acknowledgement from his father. The Count banged his hand against the table. That is enough. I will hear no more of this. It appears that you need a firmer hand than what I have been providing. Adrien looked down at the floor, anger flashing vividly in his teal-colored eyes. He believed he had done enough for the original Adrien. There was no way he could ever gain the Count's acknowledgement. What are you still doing here? The Count growled when he realized that Adrien made no attempt to leave. Without lifting his gaze, Adrien left the study. There was still 20 minutes until dinner. Adrien decided to take a walk in the garden to help cool off. He didn't want to face the rest of his family while still pissed off. The air was at a moderately warm temperature that wasn't too hot. A slight breeze would blow by every once in a while, ruffling Adrien's long hair. Adrien brought a hand up and grabbed a good bit of his hair and pulled it to where he could see it. It's longer than what I kept as Seo-jun. Maybe I should trim it? I don't want to go too short because this body is a bit more on the feminine side and short hair just wouldn't look as good. Look who we have here, a snide voice sounded from in front of Adrien. Look who's finally been let out of the cellar. Adrien looked up to find the twins. Cedric, the eldest of the two, kept his hair long just like the Count's. Braden, the second eldest, kept his hair short. He also had a mole on his left middle finger. Other than that, the two were practically identical. Braden, mother is home. Do not let her catch you speaking like that. Cedric warned his brother. Braden sneered, his blue eyes filled with hatred as he stared at Adrien. I don't know why mother dotes on him so much. He is nothing but a stain on our family name, he said with undisguised venom in his voice. Adrien shook his head, finding this second eldest brother of his a bit on the idiotic side. Remember, dear brother, we all share the same parents. The only one staining their reputation is you. Adrien turned around after that, deciding that he should attempt his walk at another time. You minus. Hey. Where are you going? Get back here. Braden yelled, sounding much like a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum. Young Master Adrien. Nadeline, who had just returned from a trip out into the shopping district, greeted him. I bought what you asked me to. Shall I take it up to your room? She said. Yes, please. Thank you, Nadeline. Adrien had Nadeline pick him up a diary while she was out in town on an errand from the head maid. Oh, Nadeline? He called out to her before she could disappear up the stairs. Yes, young master. Do you know how to cut hair? Adrien asked. Nadeline gave a curt nod of her head. Yes, young master Adrien. Will you be wanting a trim sometime today? Adrien found himself smiling. Yes. I'm thinking of trimming my hair a bit. Maybe up to my ears. I'm not sure how short I want to go, but I thought it would be nice to clean it up a bit before the start of the new school year. He said. I can do that. Nadeline's smile grew as she spoke. Her expression was extremely happy, and it was quite possible that the girl had been wanting to trim Adrien's hair for a while. Adrien departed after that, leaving Nadeline to her duties. He made his way to the dining room, surprised to find the Countess already there. The Countess was dressed in a long, white petticoat underneath an olive green skirt, a white shirtwaist, and an olive green jacket. Her pale blonde hair was styled up in a tight bun with a few strands of hair falling loosely down her heart-shaped face. Adrien gave a mental nod of approval. So, the Countess is where Adrien gets his looks. Honestly, the boy doesn't resemble the Count in the slightest. Even the blue in his my hair is slightly lighter. Hello, mother, Adrien greeted. He searched his memories to figure out which seat was designated to him. He had learned that in noble households, each person had their own seat based on their position in the household. After figuring out which seat was his, he sat down. Your face is looking much better. How is the rest of your body healing, my dear Adrien? Her pale green eyes looked at him in concern. I'm feeling much better. A frown contorted Adrien's lips unconsciously as he thought about the injuries that this body had sustained before his soul had entered it. A small, sad smile flickered across the Countess' face. It'll be over in just a few more years, my dear. After you graduate from Tris, you can take over managing the Vespa household. Father is getting up there in years and wishes for you to study under him so that you may take it over one day. She told him in a soft yet firm voice. Adrien found himself frowning. Cedric, as the eldest, was set to inherit the Mallorne county. And Arnold Ratcliffe, the Countess' father, had no heir, so it was only normal for Braden to inherit the title of Count Vespa since he was Teresa's second son. Technically, being the third son, Adrien shouldn't have any right to inherit anything unless the family purposely chose to give him something, or if something happened to either the first or second son. And wasn't the Countess the temporary heir? Women could hold titles in the Velryn kingdom, so shouldn't she be named as the heir? It's what my father wishes, and I agree, the Countess said, easily reading Adrien's facial expressions. Conversation dropped after that with the entrance of Cedric and Braden. Cedric took his seat, greeting the Countess like normal. Braden, on the other hand, shot a menacing glare at Adrien. Braden, you are brothers, please put away your differences, the Countess warned, her voice sharp. Yes, mother, Braden answered, having no intention of heeding her words. The doors opened to the dining room and Count Mallorne strolled in. He took his seat at the head of the table and the staff immediately came out with the food. This was the first time that Adrien was eating with the whole family, so this was his first time seeing a full-course meal. There was turkey, ham with pineapple slices, deviled eggs, pickled asparagus, seasoned carrots, buttered squash, roasted sliced potatoes, and flaky bread. Adrien watched as the servants served each member their food. He quietly watched the others, secretly trying to learn how they ate. After a few seconds, he picked up his silver and began eating, imitating them while making sure to keep his elbows off the table. The meal passed by without any incidents. Adrien was able to escape quietly back to his room. He grabbed the diary that Nadeline had left out on the writing desk for him. He flipped it open to the first blank page and stared at it for a while before deciding what to write. 5/16/984. Seo-jun, Seo-a, I'm sorry that I left you the way I did. If this ever finds your way to you, I wish to let you know that I'm doing well. Adrien hoped for the diary to somehow slip back into his world and not for one of his sisters to find themselves in this world. He hoped for the two of them to live long and happy lives. I know it sounds weird that I'm writing that, but I truly am doing well. And Adrien was, minus the abusive count that was now his father. I found myself in a situation straight out of a book. SEO all would love it. I have a new name and new body, and honestly, it's strange though not as strange as I thought it would be. Not that I ever expected for a situation like this to occur. Adrien felt strange that he was writing all of this down, but he felt like he had to. He missed his siblings, the only family that he had ever known, and writing down his thoughts and experiences helped make him feel closer to them. Seo-jun would hate it here. Seo would love it, though she would probably miss her cell phone. Now that I think about it, this is the first time I'm even thinking about cell phones or the internet. I guess at least having running water and magic will make up for it, probably. The tip of the ink pen glided across the pages as the words seemed to appear as if by magic. He wrote about everything, shortening it so that it wouldn't take up too much space. He did leave out the part about the Count beating the original owner of the body he currently occupied and the hostility of his new siblings. Well, Brayden seemed to be the only one hostile toward him while Cedric seemed more indifferent. He even wrote down some of the random thoughts that he had. In all honesty, writing in the diary seemed to be very therapeutic. Adrien had just finished describing everything, not forgetting to write everything in Korean so that no one in this world could read it, when Nadeline knocked on the door. "Young master, it's Nadeline. Come in, Nadeline." He closed the diary and placed it in the drawer of the writing desk. Nadeline came in and shut the door behind her. Perched in one arm was a basket with scissors, a comb, hair clips, and a towel. Adrien stayed sitting in his seat, trying to come across as more noble-like rather than acting on his instincts to help her. "Thank you for doing this," he spoke as a way to distract himself. Being raised by two sisters, it was hard for him not to help someone when he saw that they were struggling, but he remembered that he was a noble in this life. And acting like a noble was the only way to survive in this world, especially in this household. Nadeline placed the basket down on the writing desk. "There is no need to thank me, young master. I am only doing my job." She pulled out the comb and began running it through his hair, careful to avoid his stitches, which could hopefully be removed in a day's time. After she was satisfied, she used the clips to put a portion of his hair up. "How short shall I take it, young master?" Nadeline asked. "How about up to my ears? I don't want it too short like Brayden's, but I wouldn't mind having it look neater." His hair wasn't that bad to begin with, but Adrien wanted a fresh start with his new life and the hair was the easiest to start with. And it was a shame that his pretty eyes were partially hidden by the longer bangs. With a nod, Nadeline began working, not forgetting to place the towel around his shoulders to catch the falling hair. The snipping sound of scissors soon filled the air. Adrien found himself growing sleepy under Nadeline's gentle ministrations. "All done," Nadeline said before stepping back. Adrien stood up, careful not to knock the loose hair all over the floor. He didn't want to make Nadeline's job harder by scattering the hair all over the place. After wrapping up the hair-covered towel, he made his way to the bathroom where the full-length mirror was. Suppressing a whistle, he admired his new look. The shorter hair showed off Adrien's heart-shaped face and large, cat-like eyes perfectly. He was a little disappointed to see that the blue tips in his hair seemed to have moved up, keeping their place in his pale blonde hair instead of disappearing like he thought they would. "The blue in my hair is a physical representation of the elemental ability that I possess, so I suppose it was silly of me to think that it would disappear just by cutting it off." "Thank you, Nadeline. It looks good," Adrien said, thanking her. Nadeline's smile brightened her whole face while making her chubby cheeks even more pronounced. "I'm glad you like it, young master. This new hairstyle suits you just as well as the long hair." Her words caused Adrien to fall into his thoughts. Is she implying that I still look like a girl? I'm not going to complain since I look like the male version of the Countess, but this body really did not receive any of the Count's DNA. But can I even really complain about that? The Count is as much of an asshole as he is handsome, so it's nice to not resemble him like the twins do. While Nadeline cleaned up, Adrien sat down on the bed and began reading the history book that he was unable to finish before dinner. After a while, He stood up and decided to go for that walk that he couldn't go on before. The sun was low and the world was bathed in an orange glow. Adrien stepped outside and took a deep breath of fresh air. The air in this world was much cleaner than in his previous world, if you don't include the smell of manure that seems to permeate from everywhere. He found a bench to sit on. Admiring the setting sun. You cut your hair, came a quiet, rumbling voice. Adrien turned around, startled because he hadn't heard anyone approaching. Standing not too far away was Cedric, and he was surprisingly alone. "Yeah, I thought I could use a change," Adrien answered honestly, unsure of how this conversation was going to play out. It was always hard to tell when it came to Cedric. Cedric's ocean blue eyes stared at him for a second longer before turning away, a scowl marring his handsome face. "Stop being so stubborn and listen to father this time," Cedric muttered before walking off. Adrien stared at his eldest brother's departing back, unsure of what had just transpired. Did he just give me a warning, or was that some form of advice? Shaking his head, Adrien stood up and made his way back inside the manor. Seo-jun stood in front of the glass case with her daughter tucked tightly in her arms. Standing beside her were Ha-jun, Seo-ah, and a few of Seo-jun's friends from school. It was her baby brother's funeral today. His ashes had been placed in a beautifully painted urn that had been placed behind a glass wall. Inside the small cubby hole that had been reserved for Seo-jun were a few pictures of him and a couple of sketches that he had been the most proud of. Seo dabbed her eyes with the back of her hand, tears pricking at them even after she had dried them. Ha-jun was staring at the various pictures with a forlorn expression. He had been with Seo-jun for 8 years before they had decided to get married 3 years ago. He had practically helped raise Seo-jun and felt a great blow to his soul at the loss of his young brother-in-law. Seo-jun hugged her daughter closer to her, the child too young to understand what was happening. Her heart ached. Seo-jun had been the precious baby brother that she had meticulously raised. He had felt more like a son to her than a brother. The people around them slowly left one by one. Seo-jun was just getting ready to suggest that they leave too when she spotted a vaguely familiar figure in the entryway. "Mother," she mumbled. Had their mother finally decided to show her face? Shouldn't she have come sooner? No, wouldn't it have been better if she had never showed up at all? Chapter 4: A Plan for Change. "Do I have to dine with everyone today?" Adrien asked, his eyes peeled to the scene outside the window as he painted the garden below him on the canvas before him. "No, young master," Nadine answered succinctly. After the incident where the Countess had found him in the cellar, she transferred Nadine over him. Adrien now had his very own personal maid like the rest of his family members. Adrien had found out through Nadine that his personal maid had been fired a few months back for some discrepancy, and Adrien hadn't been assigned a new one since then. "Have the chef prepare something appropriate for a picnic. I think I'll like to have my meal outside," Adrien told Nadine. The weather looked and felt wonderful, and Adrien really wanted to enjoy it. He returned to his painting, a momentary reprieve from his studies. While he brushed the finishing strokes, Nadine returned. "Young master, I believe you would be able to earn a lot of money if you were to sell your paintings," Nadine commented, taking an appreciated look at the finished product. "Sell my paintings? I never even thought about it. That actually sounds like a good idea, and I could earn money, which sounds heavenly." Adrien thought seriously to himself. Adrien was allocated an allowance every month, 950 shekel. It was a relatively smaller sum compared to what the twins received, which was nearly double what Adrien received. And if Adrien converted his monthly allowance for a better understanding, it was approximately 365,000 won. A good sum, but not good enough for a noble. So, Nadine's idea of selling his paintings sounded like music to his ears. He turned to face Nadine, who was standing to his right. "Say, if I were to sell them, and if I wanted to keep the money in a private bank account without the Count's knowledge, how should I go about it?" He wasn't afraid of Nadine knowing his thoughts. The worst she could do was to inform the Countess, but Adrien was pretty sure that his mother would keep it a secret, and maybe even help him. Nadine tilted her head in thought, her index finger placed against her chin. "If that's what you want, I can find an art broker to help facilitate selling your artwork. I can also open up a bank account for you with a fake identity, Nadeline said after some thought. The reason why Nadeline suggested a fake identity was because the banks in this world didn't do background checks. When someone opens an account, they are given a card that is magically tied to their blood, so it didn't matter if one used their real name or a fake one. Let's do that, Adrien agreed. Which paintings shall I take with me to the art broker? Nadeline asked. Adrien got up and shuffled through the paintings that were piled up in the back of his closet, paintings that the original Adrien had placed there. Adrien found a few scenic ones that he knew the original wasn't too attached to and handed them to Nadeline. These should do it. Nadeline carefully took them. I'll head out tomorrow morning before everyone is awake. I have an errand to run for the head chef, so I can do it afterwards, she informed him. Adrien nodded in approval. I'll prepare a vial worth a drop of blood in it for the account. Thank you, Nadeline. Nadeline tilted her head with a confused expression. I'm only doing my duties, young master. There is no reason to show me such gratitude, she said. Adrien found himself chuckling. Just take it, Nadeline. The two of them left after that. Adrien headed out to a spot in the garden while Nadeline ran to grab the food. Since he knew he was going to have dinner outside, he had the servants prepare a table for him outside 30 minutes before he was planning to head out. Nadeline arrived not long after Adrien had sat down. The basket of food that she brought with her contained a variety of sandwiches and sliced fruit. Join me, Adrien gestured to the seat across from him. Are you sure, young master? Nademin asked cautiously. Of course. Adrien answered with a chuckle. Nadeline slid into the seat across from him. She waited for him to grab what he wanted to eat before she snatched a sandwich for herself. The sun was high in the sky and it was warm out. The heat wasn't too bad since they were sitting underneath a tall tree whose branches were shading them from the heat. The flowers in the garden had a fragrant scent that wasn't too overpowering. Young master, Nadeline decided to speak once the two of them were done eating. I heard some interesting news from my roommates while I was in the kitchen. There was a building on the back of the property that was for housing the servants. The building only had 4 rooms. Each room housed 4 servants. One of Nadeline's roommates was the personal maid for Cedric. What did you hear? He asked, his interest piqued. Hearing gossip from the servants was a good way to stay in the loop. Nadeline beamed a smile and leaned closer. She then spoke in a conspiratorial whisper. I heard that young Master Cedric asked the Count to send everyone to the academy by using the warp portal. Warp portals were large mana-inscribed stone gates that had several space magic charms inscribed onto purple gems that were embedded into the stone gate. Each portal could connect with each other to create a bridge in space to allow for faster and safer travels. Why would Cedric ask to use a warp portal when it's only a 36-hour journey from our estate to Triss Academy? Each trip cost 3,650 shekel, that included 1 carriage. The Count only made around 29,000 shekel a month. I wonder what it would be like to be a marquis or a duke. I bet a thriving duchy easily makes 5 times, if not more than what Count Mallorne does. Growing up in a poor family, Adrien saw the value in money. It's only a 36-hour trip. That seems like a huge waste of money, Adrien muttered aloud, not seeing the point in it, even if it would be an uncomfortable ride. Young master. Nadeline called to him. Yes. Adrien looked up at Nadeline, who was busy cleaning off the table. I've been meaning to ask, but what name should I use on the account tomorrow? Nadeline asked. That was a really good question. Adrien racked his brain, trying to think of a good name. How about Ephraim Godric? Ephraim meant fruitful in Hebrew while Godric meant God's rich one in Old English. Since the names in the Valran kingdom seemed to be a mix of the two, Adrien chose a name from each language. He had hoped that these 2 names will be a premonition for his future, or at least, the fruitful and rich part of the name's meanings. Nadeline gave a curt nod of her head. Ephraim Godric, she repeated to herself to help her remember. Count Mallorne was in his study poring over the day's work when he heard faint voices from outside in the garden drifting up to the 2nd floor. He stood up and made his way to the window and peered outside. Down in the garden, under the tree not far from his office window, sat his youngest son. The little maid girl that had been helping him was sitting across from him, and in between them was a basket of food. Count Mallorne's lips turned down in a sneer. It was unbefitting of a noble to actively befriend the help, especially those with commoner blood flowing through their veins. He remembered when his wife brought the young commoner girl to their house 17 years ago. A 4-year-old girl who had lost her mother and had nowhere else to go. Teresa Ratcliffe. His beloved wife of 21 years. He had gone against his father to marry her even though her family had no title to their name at the time. Because of the love for his wife, he allowed the young Nadeline to stay in their home and learn how to be a proper servant. He continued watching out the window, his sneer deepening unconsciously. It was an instinctual habit every time he laid eyes on his youngest. Adrien, who bore a strong resemblance to Teresa, was a boy who did not share a drop of his blood. It was a secret he never told the boys, nor did he inform his wife that he knew. It was hard for him not to know. The blue of his hair and eyes were of a lighter shade and his mana signature was slightly different. Most people wouldn't be able to differentiate between mana signatures at will, but because the Count knew his own mana signature and was around the boys a lot, it was easy for him to read the subtle waves between each surge of mana when the boys performed magic. And because of this, he could feel that Adrien did not receive his elemental ability from him, but from someone else. The Count had no idea who the boy's father was, but that did not matter. He was born from Teresa, so he had decided to continue raising the boy as his own. It had grown harder for him to do so in recent years. Not because he hated the boy, but because the boy didn't even try to amount to anything. Adrien would rather spend his time locked away in his room doing frivolous activities such as reading far-fetched romance novels, drawing and painting, or playing one of the many instruments the Count had bought for his wife because of her love for music. As the third son, Adrien was last in line to inherit anything. The Count was harsher on Adrien to try and set the boy on a course that would help him succeed in life. Painting and indulging in music were not things that could help Adrien succeed. But something surprising that the Count had not seen coming had happened. That old, stubborn man had decided to take Adrien as his heir. It was something the Count had not seen coming since his father-in-law was still holding out for the return of his eldest, Savian. Savian was Teresa's older brother and the reason why Arnold Ratcliffe had poured all of his money into purchasing a title. 17 years ago, Savian had disappeared while the commoner girl that he was seeing had mysteriously passed away. So, why would the Count of Vespa, his stickler of a father-in-law, give one of Teresa's sons a chance to inherit the title? Had the old man finally given up on his long-lost son, or was there a reason why the man needed an heir? "I'll run this back to the kitchen," Nadeline informed him, holding up the picnic basket to indicate what she was referring to. I'll head back to my room." Now that he had plenty of time to relax, it was time to get back to his studies. There was still a lot that he needed to learn before heading to Triss. He was making his way up the stairs when he passed by the twins. They were both garbed in their training clothes and had their swords strapped to their waists. Brayden's blue eyes darkened and his lips puckered down into a frown. He was a lot like a character from a fantasy novel, simple, idiotic, mean, and super easy to read. Oh, wait, this is a fantasy novel. I almost forgot. Adrien mentally smacked himself. Brayden's hand clenched into a fist at his side. His lips twitched as if he wanted to say something. The twins had been behaving themselves lately because the Countess had decided to stay at the manor until the boys returned to school. She had also been forcing them into having tea with her, where the boys were not allowed to fight, bicker, or complain. It was her way of forcing them to get along. The Countess was a really good mother, but because she was always absent, she was unaware and sometimes uncaring about things that happened while she was away. The only time she seemed to intervene was when one of the boys were hurt or if they were fighting with each other. Adrien wasn't trying to diss his new mother. The original Adrien had a lot of fond memories of his mother that endeared her to the current Adrien. But he did find the way that nobles cared for their children a bit lacking. They certainly weren't helicopter parents or helicopter siblings in Seo-jun's case. Adrien passed by the twins without incident. He made it to his room without passing by the head butler or the count, much to his delight. He pulled out the chair to the writing desk and sat down. It had been a few days since he last wrote a journal entry for his sisters. He pulled out the diary and wrote down the date for the day. After that, he sat back as he thought about what to write. It's been a peaceful week so far, and I seem to be adjusting relatively well. You'll be pleased to find out that I've been painting again. Nadeline, she's a maid that works here, suggested that I start selling my paintings. I hope I make a lot of money. Anyways, I've been good. What about you and Seo-jun and Ha-jun and little A-Rin? A-Rin was Seo-jun's daughter. She was a little fluff of a thing with puffy cheeks. Adrien had loved visiting his sister just so he could tease his little niece. Nadeline returned just then. Her face was flushed red, especially around her ears. Are you feeling all right, Nadeline? Adrien asked, concerned that the girl, who was the closest thing to a friend that he had in this world, was coming down with a cold. I'm fine, her voice was light and airy, sounding as if she was having an excellent day. Adrien placed the ink pen down and turned to fully face Nadeline. You ran into someone you like? Adrien guessed, having heard a similar tone of voice from his sister Seo. Everything she saw someone she thought was attractive. Nadeline jumped, startled by Adrien's accurate guess. I ran into Mr. Walter. He was leaving as I was coming up, Nadeline answered truthfully. Conrad. An image of the man appeared in Adrien's mind. He was someone that Adrien had met recently and had a good impression of. Not a bad choice, Adrien answered with a nod. Is he married? Adrien scanned through all of the original's memories but couldn't find anything about Conrad's personal life. I don't think so. But even if he wasn't, I don't stand a chance. Nadeline said, sounding defeated. Adrien shook his head, completely disagreeing with the girl. You won't know if you don't give it a try. Maybe I can help you. Being the son of the man Conrad worked for, Adrien could probably figure out a way to get those two clothes, maybe send them out on an errand or something. Please don't. Nadeline stuttered, her face turning an even brighter shade of red. Fine, I won't, Adrien said aloud, but internally his thoughts were entirely different. But that doesn't mean that I won't watch. And if I watch, I might find a way to bring them naturally closer. But first, I need to figure out if Conrad is married or currently seeing someone. Adrien dropped the subject after that. Making sure the diary was placed back in the drawer, he made his way over the small sitting area and plopped down onto the couch. A stack of books that covered an array of subjects sat in front of him. Young master, wouldn't reading the newspaper and gossip magazines help? Nadeline suggested, trying to help the young master retain any memories that still eluded him. Adrien paused in his reading, looking up at Nadeline with wide eyes. Why didn't he think of that? The books he was studying could only help him gain knowledge of the past, while newspapers could help him with current, up-to-date information, helping him understand the happenings of the kingdom. Please do. Adrien said. Nadeline rushed out of the room, quickly returning with a stack of this week's newspapers and various gossip magazines. I borrowed them from Countess Mallorne. The madam said to throw them out when you are done since they are no longer of use to her. Nadeline told him. Adrien took the stack from her. He grabbed the top newspaper and gently laid it out on his lap. Didn't the Countess have any questions about my strange behavior or why I suddenly grew interested in the current news and rising trends? Did the head injury really help me find the perfect excuse for my new and erratic behavior? It probably helps that my behavior, likes and dislikes are similar to the originals. There was a condition, though, Nadeline continued. The Countess wishes for you to come to tea time tomorrow at noon, young master. Adrien barely suppressed a groan at the news. That wasn't a condition, that was torture. Chapter 5, Heading off. Will we be taking the warp portal? Brayden asked in a whining voice that did not match his age. It's a 36-hour journey to Triss from here, and I do not want to be stuck in the same carriage as him for that long. The him that Brayden was referring to was clear as day even without him giving a name. Of course we are taking the portal, Cedric answered on their father's behalf. Cedric is right. Did he not already inform you of this? He asked me if you three could take it a few days ago," replied the Count. He was dressed in a navy blue suit with a salmon-colored frock. Adrien gave a small, indiscriminate nod of his head. Nadine had been right. Cedric really had asked the Count to send them to the academy by way of the warp portal. A sour taste filled Adrien's mouth. Nadine had found that information out almost as soon as it had happened, so how come Brayden was unaware of it? Adrien knew that his second eldest brother wasn't the brightest, but he couldn't be that stupid, could he? Brayden had been behind most of the unsavory incidents that had happened to the original Adrien, and some of them were pretty ingenious. Did that mean that he wasn't the one who had thought of them? Adrien's gaze drifted over to Cedric. Was Cedric the one behind them? Was his indifferent brother the main reason for most of the pain that the original Adrien had suffered through at the hands of Brayden and the servants? "You boys should be enjoying your time together while you are all still young," the Countess chided. "You are family, and most importantly, you are brothers. You should be getting along with each other and looking out for each other." The Countess, who was usually away most of the time, had been present for the past 2 weeks. She had been forcing the three boys to enjoy tea time with her while trying to keep the Count away. The good thing was that tea time only happened twice a week since Adrien was still suffering from his injuries. Caleb, the head butler, loaded the back of the carriage up with their luggage cases before strapping them down. "They're all tied down, sir," he reported to the Count. "Good," was the Count's immediate reply, his gaze focused on his sons. The Countess, who was wearing a lilac-colored skirt and a lilac and gold embroidery jacket, gave each boy a hug. "If anything happens, write to me and I'll be there." The Count nodded. "Remember to use your family name if you need to, but do not cause anything that will tarnish it." His stern gaze was focused on Brayden and Adrien when he spoke, making it clear on who he thought needed to heed that warning. The three of them boarded the carriage after that. The twins' personal maids stayed behind because the Count did not wish to spend the money that it would take to send 2 carriages to the capital by use of the warp portal. It was fine though. The academy provided their own on-site servants and maids to help acclimate the students since most of those who attended were of noble lineage. Cedric and Brayden sat in the cushioned bench across from Adrien, both looking like they had eaten something sour. Ignoring them, Adrien pulled out an anthropology book from his bag. Settling into the seat to make himself comfortable, he began reading. "I really need to find a bookstore. I'm gonna fry my brain by doing all this tedious reading. I need a good romance or fantasy novel to help cool off my tired brain," Adrien thought with quiet determination. The Count and Countess watched as the carriage drove off, leaving their property. The Count was the first one to head back into the manor, the Countess following along behind him. In the 2 weeks that his wife had decided to stay, she had been distant and cold to him. He had a feeling that she was angry with him but had yet to give voice to her emotions since the boys had been home. Now that they were gone, he was expecting her to confront him. "Edward," came Teresa's sharp voice. "We need to talk." She picked up her stride until she was in front of him, leading him to the closest receiving room. The Count followed after his wife, only sitting when she did. There was no tea and snacks to help break the mood between them. "You must be upset over what happened to Adrien," the Count guessed aloud when his wife showed no signs of speaking first. "At least you know. You went too far this time," Teresa said. Her vibrant light-colored eyes narrowed a frosty look onto him. "I know," the Count breathed out. He had taken Adrien to the cellar where he had Caleb whip the boy for his stubborn disobedience. The Count realized after the fact that he may have been too harsh on the boy, even if he was just trying to toughen the boy up and force his head out of the clouds. "No you don't." After Nadine and I patched him up, I called for Alfred to check on Adrien after he had passed out. Alfred was their family doctor. He didn't live on the property but he resided close enough that they could call upon him at any time during the day, and even during the night, and the man would be there in under 20 minutes. He needed stitches on head, the marks on his back will leave permanent scars that even a healing potion won't even be able to heal all the way, and he had internal bleeding. We were able to stop the bleeding by giving him a healing potion. But that was all it could fix, since that was the worst injury he suffered from, and even then it was unable to heal all the way, the Countess listed with a sharp, angry voice. Healing potions were homemade remedies that doctors concocted to help speed up the healing process. Once they were made, they were then imbued with the healing properties of the light element. They were great for small cuts and bruises, but if there was a more severe injury among them, then that would be all that the potion could heal. But even then, those severe injuries were usually still on the lighter side and were never healed all the way. Healing potions were hard to come by because the healing power was the rarest form of light magic. Not only were they low in quantity but also in quality. The reason they were unable to heal multiple injuries or completely heal serious ones was because the potion was unable to retain the full properties of the healing magic. But the potions were still more affordable and easier to come by than an actual light elementalist, since they were in high demand by the royals. That wasn't all, the Countess continued, her tone turning frostier with every word. The blow to his head was so severe that he suffers from temporary memory loss. Do you know how hard it was for me when my own son asked who I was? The Countess demanded, tears pricking her eyes as she was awash with a new wave of anger. Guilt slammed into the Count. He knew that he had been harsh on the boy, but he didn't know that he had been suffering to that extent. He had been wondering why Adrien kept making frequent trips to their personal library. It was to fill in the gaps in his knowledge. The Count lowered his head onto his steepled fingers. I didn't know, he mumbled through his guilt. It won't happen again. And he truly meant to abide by those words. Now that the Count of Vespo was showing an interest in Adrien, Edward no longer had to worry over his young guest's future as much. It better not. Adrien is too precious to be treated like some common street dog, Teresa said sharply, her eyes cold. The Count's heart sank even lower. His wife cared about all of her children, but hearing her refer to Adrien as being precious made him believe that Teresa loved the man who fathered that child more than him. He opened his mouth, wanting to ask about Adrien's father, to find out who truly had Teresa's heart, but the words wouldn't come out. He was too afraid to hear the answer. The fierce Count who had dominated the battlefield during the Continental War when he was just a teenager, and then had later on shown that he was capable of dominating menial desk work and running a county, was reduced to a quivering coward in front of the one he loved. The Continental War took place 28 years ago and had lasted for nearly 3 years. The war started when the Zili Empire tried to conquer the surrounding kingdoms. Those kingdoms banded together and fought against the oppressive empire and won. The Davies Empire became broken after the war and split apart. Part of the kingdom was integrated into the Shigaran and Valran kingdoms, while the rest of it banded together and formed a new kingdom, the Celesta Kingdom. The Countess left him drowning in his despair. As much as that side of her hurt him, that was one of the many reasons why he fell in love with her. She had been cold and calculating, and she had captured his heart by showcasing her cold and distant nature as she dominated the social world and the merchant world. She had kept that nature all throughout the first year of their marriage. She had only started softening when she gave birth to the twins. Seeing that side of her had only made him fall harder in love. "We're here," Cedric's voice pulled Adrien out of his reading. Braden, who had started dozing off, jolted awake. Outside the window, a ginormous and looming stone circle appeared, growing even more imposing as the carriage drew closer. They were at the bottom of a hill. At the top was a temple-like structure and the warp portal which stood beside it. Stone steps led up the two large and imposing structures. On the other side of the stone steps was a dirt road that led up to the warp portal. The carriage came to a stop. A guard with the Cecil's Order of Knights crest embroidered on his uniform came up to the carriage window. Cedric pulled it open to converse with the guard. "A carriage of one?" the guard asked. "That's correct," Cedric answered the man. "Do you have a pass?" the guard asked. Cedric showed the man the certificate of entry that he had pulled out of his breast pocket earlier. The guard inspected it before giving a brief nod, signaling that the ticket was genuine. The guard moved off to the side, so that the carriage could pass. The carriage started slowly moving forward with a jerk. Adrien placed the book back into his satchel and looked out the window, excited to see the warp portal up close. He was excited to see how the magic of this world worked. Magic. Adrien sat ramrod straight as a thought crossed his mind. I've been so busy with learning about this world's history that I forgot all about studying magic. Maybe I should pick up a few books on the basics for elementalism while I search for some fictional books to read. The Count had personally taught all three of his sons the basics to elementalism and mana control. They weren't the fondest of memories for the original Adrien since he had learned that his mana control was weak, not to mention that his mana levels seemed to be lower than most. That was also around the time that the Count had become strict with Adrien. Mana level was a term that was used to describe how much mana one possessed. The level of one's mana was not fixed since it could increase over time as long as one put in the effort to practice every day. Adrien quickly forgot about his worries as a new and extraordinary scene came into view. He still had tomorrow to figure it out. The scene before them was of a 20 by 20 foot stone tiled flooring with a large, circle-shaped stone statue that was hollowed out through the center. The warp portal's hollowed center was large enough that a carriage could drive through it. In the four cardinal directions of the stone object were purple crystals. These crystals were mana crystals that had been imbued with space magic, hence why they were purple in color. They held the mana of the space element in them and only needed a small amount of outside mana to operate them. An elderly man with a long white beard and shining purple eyes came out from the temple. He walked up to the large gate and stood to the side of it. Raising his arms, a purple, shimmering light left his fingertips and flowed towards the mana crystal, sparking life in them. With a light thrumming sound, the warp portal came alive as a liquid-like surface shimmered into existence in the hollowed-out space. The carriage driver flicked the reins and the horses began pulling the carriage forward, unafraid of passing through the shimmering pool of mana. The carriage entered into the light, a slight tingling sensation swept through Adrien. Soon, the hilltop scenery disappeared to be replaced by resplendent trees and a brick road. A stunning white marble temple stood off to the side. Adrien briefly wondered why there were temples located near each of the warp portals. I'm glad I wasn't born with spatial magic, Brayden muttered under his breath. The carriage continued on and soon, they came upon a bustling town. Passersby walked along the sidewalks, weaving in and out of stores. Sweepers rushed out into the empty spots of the road to clean up the shit that the horses left behind as they pulled their carriages to and fro. Adrien looked out the window, trying his best to read the passing street signs, wanting to familiarize himself with the layout of the city for when he ventured back out into it in the morning to look for a bookstore. After a few minutes, the carriage pulled down a road lined with flowering trees. At the end of the road were large structures made from gray brick. It looked like a typical view from right out of an anime, and it took his breath away. The large, pristine school was a beautiful structure that was situated on an even more beautiful plot of land that painted a serene picture. Flowering trees of various sorts lined the walkways, wrought iron benches were positioned throughout various spots lining the walkways. He couldn't see it from here but knew that there was a lake somewhere on the campus. The 4-story main lecture hall was made up of the same gray stone that the rest of the buildings were made of. Tall stone pillars lined the front of the building and the steps that led to the large wooden doors that were the main entrance. Large, inviting windows were on every floor. The carriage turned down a road that veered to the right. "We'll check in at the boys' dormitory," Cedric explained when he saw Adrien looking puzzled. It seemed like he was putting on the nice brother act for the time being. Adrien was unsure of how long the act would last. They pulled up to a 3-story building that had boys walking in and out of it. Adrien was surprised that there weren't more people around, but then he realized that one did not have to reside in the dorms if they had a residence in the capital. The three of them got out of the carriage and walked into the building. Adrien followed Cedric and Brayden to the check-in desk located in the large recreational area. After they checked in and received the keys to their rooms, the man who checked them in sent 2 maids outside to retrieve their luggage. It was a good thing Nadeline had placed name tags on his suitcases. Adrien made his way to the 2nd floor and found his room, 12A. The room was similar in size to the one he had back at the manor. Lined up against the wall was a full-sized bed with plush white bed sheets with gold trimmings. Hanging over the windows were gold curtains. The reason why the decorations were white and gold was because those were the colors for the royal family. The room also contained a small sitting area, a writing desk, and an armoire. What he didn't find was a bathroom. "Where's the bathroom?" Adrien asked the maid who was placing his luggage case onto the bed. "The dorm has a community shower room on each floor," the staff member told him. Chapter 6, Royally Good Reads. Adrien woke up the next day. He slowly got ready before heading out to explore the academy grounds. He took a path that led to the main lecture hall. He had briefly seen a map of this place near the building and wanted to get a good look at it. A small breeze swept through, gently tousling his hair. Flower petals drifted through the air, carrying a sweet scent. The academy really was a picturesque place straight out of a manhwa or novel. Students walked by, some at a leisurely pace as they conversed with friends, while others hurried by in a rush to grab any essentials they may need for the start of the term. There was a person with vibrant green hair swinging on a canopy made from vines that grew out of one of the trees. Flowers adorned the girl's hair, and Adrien wondered if she possessed the earth element. He arrived at his destination, where he easily found the map he had been looking for. It appeared that other than the main lecture hall and the 2 dormitories, there was also a music hall located on the left side of the grounds, and a training hall on the right side of the grounds. In the rear grounds was a pond and a forest area. Not far from the forest were the faculty buildings and the stables. Adrien went back the way he came, but instead of going to the boys' dormitory, he continued on. The pond soon came into view, and the towering buildings that housed the teachers and the servants loomed behind it. After walking for 10 minutes, he came upon the stables. "Will I be able to get a ride into the city?" he asked one of the workers. "Of course. Any place you're wanting to go?" the middle-aged man asked him. "I'd like to find a bookstore and possibly a good place to eat on the same street," Adrien said. "Livingston and Lorient both have excellent bookstores. Though, if you want the underground books, I suggest Lorient," the man said with an exaggerated wink. Underground books referred to those that featured same-sex couples, those with a mature rating, and loosely liberal books. They weren't banned and were actually legal. They were just placed out of view so as to not bring down the store's reputation. "That sounds good. How much do I owe you?" Adrien asked. "Carriage rides into the city and the surrounding areas are free of charge," the man explained. "Let me get a carriage ready and I'll take you there." As Adrien waited for the carriage, he formulated a list of books that he wanted to buy, though they were more of a general idea than an actual list of titles. There were a few books that he knew the titles to that he wanted to read. He had a vague idea of them from some of the original's blurry memories. Even though the original Adrien had read them, Adrien wanted to read them for himself. Adrien boarded the carriage once the carriage was ready, and it didn't take long until the city came into view. They soon came upon Lorient Street, where the carriage driver pulled over to let Adrien out. "What time do you want me to come pick you up?" the carriage driver asked. "Around 1 should be good." After Adrien agreed to meet the man back at this spot in 4 hours, the carriage pulled off. Adrien walked down the street, taking in the shops and the people around him. Before long, he came to a stop in front of a sign that read Royally Good Reads. It was a 2-story building that was painted yellow with white steps and banisters. He walked into the store and immediately felt his spirits soar at the smell of dried ink and paper. He found the magical theory section and picked out 2 books that looked like they might be useful. He then went to the 2nd floor, where all the fictional books were housed. Various tables and seats were scattered throughout the floor. He also noticed a few rooms with beaded curtains hanging in front of them. Taking a gander, Adrien headed for one of the curtained rooms. Inside, he found various books with scandalous, ordinary, or overly flowery covers on them. He picked up a book at random and read the back of it. "The Duke and His Stable Boy." Read the title. Adrien then read the synopsis. The young Duke of Williams had no interest in high society, preferring to keep to his lands. This made him the center of much gossip. Growing interested in the man who was the highlight of many conversations, the illegitimate son of a baron goes to the Williams duchy and disguises himself as a commoner on the search for a job. Sparks ignite like a wildfire between the two as an unexpected romance blossoms. Adrien placed the book on top of the other two, already anticipating the steamy romance that the cover hinted at. But wait, isn't the queen consort's maiden name Willems? Someone was audacious enough to write a book about the second prince. And they got away with it. Serena was sitting down at a tea table with Paulina in the glass-enclosed garden that her husband had built for her. Beautiful flowers with a subtle scent lined the walkways, giving the garden a pure and innocent feel that calmed one's spirit. The doors to the glass house were opened by the knight stationed there. Strutting in while dressed in an impeccable white suit with red and gold accents was Paulina's son. His blonde hair shimmered like gold as the sun hit it and his vibrant red eyes sparkled like gems. Serena felt herself sigh at how handsome of a man Michael was growing into. The boy had gotten the best genes from both Asher and Paulina. He was the only one out of their 3 children who had taken after Asher the most. "Greetings, your majesties," Michael greeted them with a slight bow. Serena and Paulina both frowned. "Michael, dear, I've told you to drop those stuffy greetings," Serena scolded him. Michael came up to them and kissed each of them on the cheek. "I only wish to show the respect that you lovely ladies deserve," he told them smoothly. "What has brought you by today?" Paulina, his birth mother, asked. She had brushed off his greeting, having grown used to his flowery words and the teasing light in his eyes. "I'm heading out into the city to pick up a new book that has been released today. I've come to see if you wanted anything while I was out," he told them. Serena sighed at her handsome, non-biological son. He stubbornly insisted on retrieving anything he wanted himself. She believed he was doing it on purpose to paint him in a vacuous and facetious light, someone who was not hard-working and only sought out a laid-back, frivolous life. "I don't need anything," Paulina stated with a shake of her head, her gentle blonde curls swaying with emotion. "A son-in-law," Serena teased him, though she was being completely serious. Michael was too handsome to let his looks go to waste by not snagging himself a boyfriend. Out of all of their sons, Michael was the only one who was not engaged. Nor was he seeing anyone romantically. He was also the only one who wasn't interested in the opposite sex, which limited his options since he was a person with the most noblest of bloodlines. "Serena," Paulina gasped, her crystal blue eyes widening in surprise. Serena laughed good-naturedly, her eyelids briefly covering her golden eyes. Michael's lips lifted up into a smirk. "I'll try, but that may be a difficult task to accomplish." "Don't listen to her," Paulina said, taking her hand and gently smacking Serena on the arm. Serena lifted a manicured hand up and brushed a piece of her red hair behind her ear. "He should listen to me. He is wasting his good looks," she said. The 3 of them bantered back and forth for a few more minutes before Michael left. Paulina turned to Serena, her doll-like blue eyes narrowing. "How can you say something like that? You know he's only pretending to be into men so as to not get in Nathaniel's way." Nathaniel, their oldest son who was born from Serena, was named as heir to the throne 3 years prior. "Lena, dear, you should know how stubborn your son is. When he says he's going to do something, he does it. That's why he's pretending to be average at swordplay, average at magic, and so on. And he'll continue with this ridiculous act until the day he dies," Serena said. "I know that," Paulina sighed. "But I still do not believe he is attracted to men, even though I know he will stubbornly marry one." Serena knew that Paulina was not against same-sex couples, she just wasn't able to accept her son's constant hiding of himself. "Is that why you have your aide write all those books with a male lead based on your son? The ones where he falls for the pretty, noble girl?" Serena teased her best friend and sister wife. Paulina reddened in the face, her cheeks taking on a beautiful shade of pink. "You knew?" Serena nodded her head as an answer. It wasn't hard to figure out that Paulina had been secretly publishing books based on her son. She wasn't the only one who did it. Sarna's son, Nathaniel, had hired a secret writer to write fluffy romance stories about Michael. The 2 of them believed that doing this would help expose Michael's good side to the outside world. What Serena meant by his good side was the non-prankster side to him, the side that those outside of their family did not get to see, the sincere, hardworking, and stubborn side. "Don't look so embarrassed," Nathaniel does it too. Serena teased Paulina. Really? Paulina asked in shock. Serena nodded. I also write books about him, quite popular ones. But of course they're popular. With the male lead having Michael's good looks and playful attitude. And of course, all the steamy bed scenes, it would be hard for the novels to not be a big hit. And unlike Paulina, the love interest is always a man, which meant that it attracted the attention of a lot of women, both of noble and common birth, giving me a wide reader base. Paulina sighed, her face finally returning to normal. Now I know where Michael learned his attitude from, she grumbled. Serena was unable to deny her words. They were, in fact, the truth. But Serena and Paulina would have never married the same man if Serena hadn't been the way she was. A flashback to many years ago. Stop fidgeting. You look beautiful, Serena assured her best friend. She and her friend Paulina were at a ball being held in the royal palace to celebrate the successful return of the kingdom's only prince, Crown Prince Asher de Valron. He had been participating in the Continental War, and had just returned the week prior after the war ended in victory. Paulina removed her hand from her head, where it had been brushing back a piece of silky blonde hair. Thank you, but you are the one who is beautiful. Serena was dressed in a red and black fishtail gown with an illusion neckline. It showed off all of her excellent features as it stuck to her slender body like a glove. Her red hair was styled back with a black diamond hair accessory, and her makeup was on point. She looked over at her friend who could be the picture-perfect storybook heroine. Paulina's silky blonde hair had a gentle wave to it and her crystal blue eyes were very doll-like. Her slender figure had ample curves that were hidden by her white A-line gown with a halter neckline. Pink flowers accented the waist of the gown. Serena placed a hand on the side of her chin and tilted her face as she sighed. You look like a fairy tale heroine while I look like a villain. Serena said. Don't say that. Tears pricked the corners of Paulina's eyes, making her appear even more beautiful. The chatter in the ballroom grew excited just then. Serena turned toward the entrance to find a dashing young man with hair that glistened like gold and sharp eyes that were reminiscent of freshly cut rubies. Wow, Serena breathed out. Without a doubt, the handsome man was Crown Prince Asher. The prince navigated the room for a few minutes before his eyes landed on Serena. With confidence that only a prince could muster, he walked up to Serena and Paulina. I am Asher Velron, Crown Prince of the Velron Kingdom, he greeted them with a bow. May I have the honor of knowing your name? He asked Serena. Serena and Paulina both curtsied. I am Serena Aronson, daughter of Duke Aronson. My friend is Paulina Williams, daughter of Marquis Williams. Serena introduced them even though the prince hadn't asked for Paulina's name. May I have the honor of having this dance? He held his arm out to Serena. Serena took a good look at the handsome man, knowing that he would be the best marriage candidate that any young noble lady could find. I would be honored only if you agree to dance with my friend afterwards. Serena told him. Paulina shot her a horrified look. It will be my honor, Prince Asher readily agreed. The crown prince led Serena out onto the dance floor, moving with the grace that came with years of practice. After their dance was over, Prince Asher led a shy and red-faced Paulina out onto the floor. I can't believe you did that. Paulina whispered once she was back beside Serena. That was embarrassing. Serena shot her friend a look. Get used to it. His Royal Highness is the best-looking man who is still a bachelor, and since he is a prince who is allowed to have more than one spouse, I plan on pursuing him for the both of us, Serena admitted confidently, her golden eyes curving up in amusement. Back to the present. Thank you, come again. The cashier said with a smile. Adrien grabbed the paper bag that the clerk had handed him. It was filled with all of the books that he had found interesting, which was far more than he had planned on buying. He was exiting the shop without looking where he was going when he slammed face first into a rock-hard surface. He stumbled back, falling onto his butt. I'm sorry. Are you all right? Asked a rich and velvet voice that sounded like music to his ears. A hand appeared in his line of sight, offering to help him up. The hand was large and very masculine-looking with a few scars on it. Was this guy a knight? Adrien had recognized that scar pattern that was similar to Cedric and Braden's, which came from hours of sword practice over a course of years. Not to mention all those calluses on his hand. Adrien took the hand, amazed as the owner easily lifted him off the ground. Adrien bowed his head, not daring to look at the man's face for fear that it would not match his voice. "I'm sorry for not paying attention." "Thank you." With his books clutched close to his chest, he darted out of the store without looking back. That was embarrassing. "I can't believe I fell over just like that." What was even more confounding was the fact that Adrien had that much reaction over just hearing a voice. A voice? Maybe that was the reason he preferred men even though he also liked women? Mentally shaking away his befuddled thoughts, he raced toward the nearest restaurant without looking back, missing the curious gaze that was staring at his retreating form. Adrien practically dove into the nearest restaurant, a small cafe that sold sandwiches, pastries, and drinks. He ordered a turkey sandwich and a glass of water with a squirt of strawberry and orange juice in it. When it approached close to the time he agreed to meet the carriage driver, he headed to the agreed-upon spot. The carriage driver was just pulling up when he arrived. "How was your trip?" the same old man from before asked him. "It was good. Thank you for the recommendation," Adrien said in a bit of a daze. Adrien settled into the carriage, the seats not as comfortable as what was in the Mallorne carriage. He pulled out a book to read during the short ride back to the academy. He read the book's title, Understanding Mana. He then read the synopsis. Mana is the emergence of magical power, also known as the life essence within a living object. It has been dubbed as the source of magical power. Mana flows throughout the entire body by following the flow of blood, with the highest concentration of mana being in the heart. Adrien read over the intro, finding the information it provided similar to what he had read in another book, although that book did not concentrate on how to freely use mana like this one was supposed to. Mana is similar to the DNA found in one's body, meaning that it is unique to each individual while possessing similar traits to blood relatives. That was something Adrien did not know. He knew that people could sense their own mana, but didn't know that one could glean deeper information from their own mana and the mana of others on a molecular level. Wouldn't this mean that mana-sensitive people could find long-lost family members just by seeing one use magic, or something like that? Was it a good thing, or a bad thing, that most people weren't sensitive enough to deftly read mana on the molecular level? Adrien looked out the window and noticed that they were nearing the academy. He closed the book and placed it back in the bag. Once the carriage was back at the stables, he alighted from it. He then made his way to the boys' dormitory, eager to finish reading the beginnings to magical theory and mana control. He closed the bedroom door behind him. After placing his newly bought books away, he settled down onto the bed with the book that will hopefully help him control the mana inside him so that he could use the water element. Meditation is the basics for mana control. He read the intro. When one is just starting out with learning how to use mana, proper breathing and a relaxed mind with a clear focus can help until one can access their mana like it is second nature. One way to accomplish a way to sense mana within oneself, and it's usually the easiest and most often overlooked method, is meditation. Meditation is a practice that involves focusing or clearing one's mind. Using meditation to sense one's mana allows for a deeper connection to be established between one and their mana. Adrien found himself nodding along. He had read several novels where the author had integrated this kind of method when explaining the flow of magic in that world. Although, those were fantasy novels and this was reality, sort of. He flipped the book over onto its open side and laid it down on the bed. Getting into position, he closed his eyes and breathed in deeply. He cleared his mind and focused on his breathing. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Repeat. Adrien felt the world behind his closed eyelids spin. Before he could open his eyes, his head and side hit the soft bed. Opening his eyes, he saw a pinkish-orange glow outside the window. Huh. I fell asleep. But I was just breathing in and out. How did I fall asleep? Adrien picked himself up off the bed. He flipped the forgotten book back over and read where he left off, hoping to find another way to access his mana. Should I just try practicing the way the Count had taught the original Adrien? Adrien placed the book down once again and climbed out of bed. He grabbed the pitcher of water that one of the academy's maids had refilled upon his return earlier that day. He poured some of it into a bowl and sat it down on the floor. He then sat down before it, sitting with his legs crossed as he did so. Holding out his hand, he took a deep breath, focusing his mind onto his hand. He tried to imagine an invisible connection between his hand and the water. He imagined the water surging up, following the invisible connection to his hand. An icy cold feeling surged through his blood, concentrating at his hand. A faint, blue light shimmered around his hand, flickering in and out of existence. A heaviness overtook him as exhaustion came over him in thick waves. The flickering blue light grew fainter and fainter before blinking out for the final time. Adrien fell backwards, breathing heavily as sweat poured off of him. He was not expecting that small experiment to completely drain him, and he didn't even move the water, not even a small ripple. After a few minutes of trying to catch his breath and waiting for the room to stop spinning, Adrien slowly climbed to his feet. He decided to give it a rest. If he couldn't produce mana tomorrow for one of his core classes, then so be it. He put the water in the bowl back into the pitcher. He then pulled the string that was hanging near the bed, signaling for a maid to come. I love being a noble. Maids are a blessing in disguise. Amelia, a maid with strawberry blonde hair and reddish-pink eyes, knocked on the door before coming in. "Is there something you need?" she asked. "Could you get me an orange tea and some biscuits?" Adrien asked with a smile. "I'll be right back," Amelia said before leaving. While Adrien waited for Amelia, he pulled out his diary and sat down at the desk. 5-27, 984. Hello Seo-jun, Seo. It's officially been 2 weeks and 1 day since I've reincarnated. Today, I tried practicing mana. Adrien didn't bother with explaining what mana was or about the magic of this world since he had explained it in an earlier entry. So, it's not as easy to do as the books make it sound. 2 attempts got me a nap, a headache along with mental fatigue, and nothing to show for it. He tapped the ink pen against the paper as he tried to think of what to write next. Okay, this isn't exactly important, but I have now figured out why Seo-jun always droned on and on about that voice that American actor in all those pirate movies has. When I was out shopping for books, I ran into someone with a voice that I could listen to all day long and never get sick of. Maybe this is why I prefer men over women, because I am subconsciously attracted to their voices. Amelia returned just then. Adrien shut the diary and pushed it off to the side as Amelia brought his requested snacks. The aroma of the tea made his mouth water. After taking a sip of the delicious tea, he picked up a biscuit, which was just a plain butter cookie, and took a bite. He felt his fatigue lightening up a little as he ate the snacks in front of him. Once he was done, Amelia cleared away his mess. "Is there anything else I can do for you?" she asked. Adrien shook his head. "Not that I can think of right now." After Amelia left, Adrien flipped the diary back open. "I miss you guys. How have you been? How has Ha-jun and little A-Rin been?" He looked down at the words, realizing that he didn't actually have that much to say. He decided to stop writing for the night. After putting away the diary, with the plan of writing more tomorrow since he will have something exciting to write about by then, he grabbed the steamy romance book that he had bought and took it with him to the bed. He wondered how the boys' love genre would be in this world. He was also curious about this world's definition of mature content.